Greetings to all of you. I want to talk today about the new moon on April 27th. This is a very powerful new moon, in part because it's a supermoon, meaning that at the time of this new moon, the moon is in her orbit her closest to the Earth. So the energies of this new moon will be powerfully felt in the movement of the tides and the waters of the earth, and in our own inner waters, in our own emotional experiences. So it's important that we work with this new moon consciously. And remember that this new moon is coming as we are in this larger cycle with the precessional cycle, with the Hindu Yuga cycle of coming out of the time of the Kali Yuga, of coming out of this last 5,000 to 6,000 years of being in a lower level of consciousness where we're caught in paradigms of power over, abuse of power, destruction, conquest, greed, corruption, a lack of alignment with truth. And as we're moving into the Aquarian age and the Aquarian paradigms, we're guided to be in this accelerated time of moving into higher consciousness, of remembering who we truly are as humans, being soul selves, having this human experience, that we can remember what it means to come back into balance, harmony, truth, justice, all of those paradigms of the Aquarian age. So this new moon is critical in guiding us in this process of transition and transformation that we're in. I was sharing in my patron discussion group meeting on Saturday about how profound it is as I've been delving into these transits, these planetary energies, as we're in this critical time of transformation on the planet, that it is exquisite that the energies of the earth and sky are step by step guiding us in how to heal, how to awaken, how to be transforming, how to move into higher consciousness. And this new moon is a powerful part of that. So let's look at the chart. This new moon comes on April 27th with the sun and moon at 7 degrees of Taurus. And what's very powerful about this new moon is that it's a part of a T-square with Pluto and Mars. Mars was in opposition with Pluto in the past. It's now come back into opposition with Pluto, with Mars in Leo, opposite Pluto and Aquarius. And now this new moon is squaring both of them. So this is the really profound energetic of this new moon. And we need to understand it in the context of this dance that Mars and Pluto have been in. They were initially in opposition, Mars in Leo opposite Pluto in Aquarius, starting November 20th, 2024, when Pluto moved fully into the sign of Aquarius, which I really see as the threshold point guiding us to move more into the paradigms of the Aquarian age. It was in that opposition through January 5th of 2025. And then Mars moved back into Cancer as it went retrograde and out of that opposition. But now Mars has gone direct, moved back into Leo, moved into opposition again with Pluto starting April 18th, and will now be in this opposition until May 7th, 2025. I think it is very profound that they moved into opposition just as Pluto moved fully into the sign of Aquarius, and now again as we've moved out of that time of the Kali Yuga. I think at the deepest level, the meaning of this powerful opposition is we need to honor the transformational energy of Pluto guiding us to take responsibility for our actions, Mars, to step out of balanced expressions of Mars that have been so characteristic of the Kali Yuga, and especially the time from the age of Aries ruled by Mars up through the present. We've experienced the out of balanced expressions of Mars, which are about conquest, control, power over, destruction. That is the out of balanced expression of Pluto Mars, because Pluto empowers whatever it touches. And if this combination, hard aspect between Pluto and Mars, is worked at a lower level of consciousness, is worked from a place of ego, this can be a signature of abuse of power. But if we honor the deeper meaning of these planets, Pluto is the planet of alchemy, trying to support us in burning away what no longer serves us, to be in the true gold of who we are. And in opposition with Mars in Leo, it is saying, remember who you really are, Leo. Remember your capacity for creative self-expression, Leo. Let your actions, Mars, the expression of your third chakra, Mars, the way in which you are expressing yourself in the world, be in alignment with Pluto, the higher octave of Mars, guiding us to align our actions, our energies, our identity with divine consciousness, with the power of, with the empowerment of cosmic consciousness, so that our ego is in alignment with our soul self remembering that we are a fractal expression of cosmic consciousness, so that now our actions, Mars in Leo, are coming from that expression of the light of our own creativity, Leo, and our ability to be expressing our actions in the world in a way that are the higher energy of Mars, in how we are in service to our own path and purpose, our own alignment with our soul self, to be bringing our actions out in an expression of those Aquarian paradigms that are about collaboration, cooperation, justice, truth, being in right relationship. And then that new moon, Sun and Moon in Taurus, allow us to ground that Taurus, manifest that, integrate that, as we're weaving together the powerful energies of these fixed signs. It's also significant at the time of this new moon that Jupiter is squaring the lunar nodes and will continue to square the lunar nodes through this upcoming full moon on May 12th as well. And Jupiter is the planet guiding us to have faith, to trust that we can move into these new forms, guiding us to move into new beliefs. Jupiter in Gemini. And it, in its square with the lunar nodes, is applying to the North Node. So as we have faith that we can be in this time of transformation, we can move into what the North Node in Pisces is calling us into: compassion, remembering that we're a part of the oneness of all that is Pisces. And this North Node continues to be conjunct Saturn, Venus in Pisces, in an out-of-sign conjunction with Neptune in Aries, and in a conjunction with Ceres, supporting us to bring our relationships into new forms that are about compassion, that are about coming into that alignment with the interconnectedness and oneness of all that is, and being in right relationship with the earth as well. Ceres. This is a very powerful new moon, and I think it's very important, Jupiter in Gemini, to look at our beliefs about these energies. There are many, particularly coming out of that perspective of traditional astrology that looks at certain planets as malefic or benefic, there can be a fear that these hard aspects, this T-square and the hard aspect in particular between Mars and Pluto, can indicate something traumatic is going to happen to us. There will be some outbreak of violence or war or abuse of power. We need to really take responsibility, and I think that's a huge theme of this new moon, responsibility for our own actions, our own beliefs, our own perceptions. Because if we get caught in that fear, then we are focusing our energy on what might happen to us, getting caught in that fear that we are still bound by the paradigms of the Kali Yuga that are about perpetrator victim. Something is going to happen to harm us, or there will be some trauma or some violence. And then that fear, that projection, can play into the way in which we're unconsciously supporting that in manifesting. So we need to be very clear about our energies, our intentions, our projections, our perceptions as we move into the time of this new moon. But let's hold with compassion that it may activate that fear for us. Because I do know in my years of doing readings and my integration of being a clinical psychologist as well as an astrologer, that when I see hard aspects between Mars and Pluto in a birth chart, it can be an indicator of a trauma pattern. It can either be an indicator of someone who's caught in their own reactivity and abuse of power or destructive acting out, or the other end of the spectrum. And most of the people that I do readings with, their experience of those hard aspects of Mars are being a victim of abuse of power or trauma. I have a hard aspect between Mars and Pluto in my own chart. And it has manifested in my life, not as an experience of early abuse or trauma, although that's true in the charts of many people that I work with. But for me, it was a manifestation of my being caught in experiences of destructive acting out or abuse of power in my adult life, where I was in traumatic or abusive experiences. In my time as a psychologist in Los Angeles, I was in certain situations with clients. I worked a lot with clients with a lot of trauma history, a lot of clients with psychotic issues. I had my life threatened at times, once over a period of years. So in that situation, I really had to take responsibility. How do I respond to this? And I had to deal with my fear. I had to deal with my anger. I had to deal with my response to that trauma. And I had to find my path to not being controlled by it and to then be caught in either my ongoing fear or reactivity to it, or letting it control my life. And I think part of what we're all facing in this profound time on the planet is, how do we heal our individual trauma? How do we heal our collective trauma? There are so many people suffering in the world right now who are victims of war or violence or tragedy. And we need to hold our compassion and support for them, and also be supporting the collective and how we can heal and stop these patterns of generational trauma and collective trauma, or the trauma keeps perpetuating itself. We each have to take responsibility for how we can heal, to come back to center, to then be agents of healing on the planet in this time. We are being called, and I think this new moon is a powerful message to us to take responsibility for our own choices, our own actions, so that we can choose to heal, to break out of those patterns of abuse of power, of trauma and re-traumatization, to come back to our hearts, Leo, to live in alignment with the empowerment of cosmic consciousness, Pluto, to guide us, to live in alignment with our soul selves that are able to live not caught in fear, not caught in trauma, to come back into alignment with truth and justice and love and compassion. And let me show you some other really important themes in this chart. In an exquisite way, as we delve into the deeper layers of this new moon chart, it is telling us how we can be in that process of transformation, to take responsibility for our actions, to step more fully into this time of ascending consciousness and new forms, new ways of being, to no longer be caught in this perpetrator-victim dynamic or caught in these experiences of trauma and abuse of power. I think it's very significant that Jupiter, guiding us to have faith, to move into new beliefs, is in a sextile with Chiron and Erisina. It's also in a trine with Chariklo. And it is, again, in this square with all these energies in Pisces conjunct the North Node. The energy of the healing centaurs have been so powerfully at play as we're in this profound transition time out of the Kali Yuga, and as we've been moving into the age of Aquarius. There's this constant message, it's time to heal. Chiron and Aries, heal our sense of self, heal those out of balanced paradigms from the age of Aries that have brought us into these trauma patterns that have been perpetrated now across the last 4,000 years in particular. Erisina saying, move in new directions, new forms. Don't stay locked in the patterns of the past. Chariklo, hold with compassion your own trauma and hold that sacred space for hearing and seeing others in their pain, in their wounds, in their trauma. In that way, we can heal and we can support the healing of each other. It's also very significant that if you add in Haumea, the Kuiper Belt object, and Black Moon Lilith, and Vesta, the asteroid in Scorpio, they are all in opposition with this new moon, now forming a grand square in the 4 fixed signs. So what's supporting this transformation of Mars is for us to complete this grand square with integrating the energies of Haumea, that Hawaiian creation deity who knew how to transform herself to be supporting new life, regeneration. Black Moon Lilith, remember the wisdom of the sacred feminine. Remember the wisdom coming to us from ancient cultures prior to this Kali Yuga time of forgetting, of being in lower consciousness. Amazingly enough, we were really moving into the golden age, the time of highest consciousness in the age of Scorpio. Lilith is reminding us of that, and the reminder also that we need to reclaim the wisdom of the sacred feminine, how to be in that empowerment of being in right relationship, right harmony with all that is, in order to transform and move into higher consciousness and into these Aquarian paradigms. And Vesta is guiding us to hold that sacred flame within us, to hold that energy of transformation and the sacred feminine to guide us in this time of transmutation and transformation. And I often associate this asteroid Vesta, the sacred flame, with that perpetual flame of the goddess Bridget, still kept alive in Ireland. It is this energy of Bridget, the goddess of healing, of fire and water, who helps us through threshold experiences, times of transition. We are being supported to know that these energies of the sacred feminine are guiding us in how we can heal and move into these new forms and no longer be caught in the trauma patterns of an out of balanced Mars. It's also incredibly significant that also moving into conjunction with the North Node, and will be even in a tighter conjunction at the time of the full moon, May 12th, is the centaur, the healing centaur, Nessus. This healing centaur is different in its origins from the others, and I've talked about this in an earlier video, but what I think is so profound about its now moving into conjunction with the North Node is Nessus's is that the theme of this healing centaur is, as Melanie Reinhardt would say, the buck stops here. Nessus is about the importance of our facing these ancestral patterns, the perpetration of trauma, to say, it stops here. I choose to break that pattern of trauma, re-traumatization. I choose to heal. And remember, from that shamanic perspective, when we heal forward 7 generations and back 7 generations. But remember, the whole story of Nessus coming out of Greek mythology is this dynamic where Nessus is caught in this trauma pattern with Heracles. Nessus tries to rape Heracles' wife. Heracles sees this unfolding, shoots a poison arrow to kill Nessus. Nessus then reacts to set up a revenge that ends up killing Heracles. This is such a model, an example of that perpetration of trauma that we have lived with on the planet across the last 4,000 to 5,000 years, particularly starting in the age of Aries up to the present. Abusive power leads to more abusive power, leads to the perpetuation of this victim-perpetrator dynamic that just keeps getting acted out. And it is getting acted out on the individual level, on the ancestral level, on the collective level. And as we're moving out of the Kali Yuga, these energies of the earth and sky are saying, now is the time it needs to stop. And we need to take responsibility for how we are acting, how we are aligning with these energies of healing and transformation to be agents of change in the world in this time. And in an extraordinary way, the Kuiper Belt object Varuna is conjunct Mars opposite Pluto. Varuna is this ancient Hindu deity originally known as a sky god, and its energies are very much about how are we aligning with the energy of order over chaos, of cosmic law, of truth, of justice. Again, supporting us in this transformation of our actions, to take responsibility, to be in this time of transformation, to be empowered in being agents of change, coming from our hearts with compassion to support the healing of ourselves and the healing of the world. Let me just go back to this other chart that's easier to read for a moment, because as we're integrating all of this, one thing I want to stress as we're reclaiming our integration of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, it's important that we're also reweaving an integration of polarities, that we're moving beyond that time in the Kali Yuga of being locked in duality and locked into polarities and polarization. Unity consciousness is about integrating these energies of the oppositions, of the polarities, to come into a higher consciousness of what they are in their integration and in the form that holds them both and transcends their differentness. It's part of what we're being called into with this incredible grand square of the new moon. But it's also important, and this is an ongoing theme that I've been talking about in weaving the energies of the sacred feminine, the sacred masculine, the southern hemisphere, the northern hemisphere, to also be weaving together the energies of light and dark. The sacred feminine wisdom reminds us of the wisdom of the dark, the wisdom of the dark, fertile void of our galactic center, the womb of our galaxy. And as we honor the lunar cycle, it's really important that we reclaim an honoring of the wisdom of the dark of the moon, that we in modern Western culture tend to override with our obsession with the light. So we forget about the sacred time of the dark of the moon, which was honored in ancient cultures for thousands of years as that liminal time where we're in transformation and opening to the guidance from cosmic consciousness to support us in this new cycle that then gives birth to the new moon and moves into fullness with the full moon, and then back into the waning moon, death, rebirth at the time of the dark of the moon, new moon. So as we honor that time of the dark of the moon, which is the day before, so as we honor that time of the dark of the moon, which is the day before the new moon, the actual day of the new moon, and the day after, I want you to see where the moon was when she went into her time of disappearance and darkness, in that sacred time of the dark of the moon. The day before, as she's disappearing from view, she was at 22 degrees of Aries, conjunct Chiron and Erisina. As we honor that liminal time between the last lunar cycle and this new one, we're called to heal, to have faith, to open to the transformation of our sense of self, to move in new directions, to manifest new forms. So now, as we honor this new moon at 7 degrees of Taurus, let's look at what the Sabian symbol is for how we're meant to manifest this transformation of ourselves, of Mars, as we heal and come more into wholeness, come more into balance, come more into harmony with all that is. The meaning of the Sabian symbol, the image for that degree in Taurus, is a sleigh on land uncovered by snow. A sleigh on land uncovered by snow. What this means in terms of the larger context of those degrees in Taurus is that we're meant to be building bridges to end that paradigm of separation, of duality, of misuse of power. Then we become agents of hope, of change. And we are able to practice and this is the meaning of that degree in Taurus, the ability to make something out of nothing with creative optimism. And this interpretation is from James Burgess's site on the sapient symbols, which I'll list below. But this is an indication that we can be moving out of these paradigms of the past, be in this liminal time where we don't have a clear sense of what's yet to emerge, but we can hold that sense of hope and faith, Jupiter, to be energizing new forms that come out of our imagination, our creativity, our connection with cosmic consciousness, to manifest paradigms that are about compassion, creativity, coming back into right relationship, instead of staying caught in the familiar patterns of trauma and abuse of power, and that dynamic of victim and perpetrator that is still playing out in its last gasp on the planet. We can be agents of healing and transformation and change. Now let's look at where these energies are in the sky at the time of this new moon. At the time of the new moon, the sun and moon will be conjunct in the sky here under the stars of Aries and moving into this powerful part of the sky called in the Stair of Cetus, which is where Perseus the warrior is trying to slay the sea monster. Remember, this again is a Greek myth coming out of the age of Aries that is about this conflict of duality, of the dangerous sea monster needing to be slain by the fierce and brave warrior. But in a deeper way, these energies are about the sacred masculine. What is the true spiritual warrior who's able to see the truth of the whale, the wisdom of the deep, of the sacred feminine, to not be in conflict and in effort of conquest, but in right balance, the integration of the duality, the healing and reweaving of the sacred masculine and sacred feminine. Aries is the age when we got into that out of balanced paradigm and misuse of Mars. It is in the age of Aries that we started to experience wars and the various ways in which the abuse of power played out. This is not something that's been perpetual in our human history. It is a trauma response that I think came out of trauma happening with climate change, with earth changes, are getting caught in fear, reactivity, then projecting that fear onto what's outside of us, onto the sky, onto the earth, onto the other, and then getting caught in efforts at control, conquest, survival of the fittest to try to deal with our trauma. But we dealt with that trauma in destructive ways that have led to this perpetuation of trauma individually and collectively now across the last 4,000 years. And this new moon is saying, now is the time for transformation. The new moon is facing the stars of Aries, that ram that has become a symbol of power over rather than the right expression of self. Aries, that right manifestation of the hero's journey, which is how do I tap in to my own uniqueness and creativity to be of service to others. And interestingly enough, again, if we look a day earlier at when the moon is moving into the dark of the moon, that time of being in the liminal space, the transformation, the wisdom to guide us into this new lunar cycle, the moon is in the stars of Pisces above Alresha, the star that is symbolic of the sacred knot, the reweaving of the polarities to come into oneness, to then move into new forms that are about healing that theme of duality and of competition and conquest to come into unity consciousness. And I think it's profound that Jupiter, that is in the chart, showing us that we can be held in that energy of hope and faith and trust, that we're being guided through this time of transformation, is here in the stars of Taurus, between the horns of the bull, right beneath the star El-Nath. And what's significant about this star El-Nath is that in more ancient times, particularly in the age of Taurus, before we moved into these paradigms of war, abuse of power, when we still had that honoring of the earth and the sacredness of all of life, El-Nath represented cosmic order, being in harmony, balance. So Jupiter is reminding us that we can tap into that ancient memory of sacred feminine wisdom from the age of Taurus, of these more ancient times when we've lived as humanity in harmony and balance with cosmic order, with being in right relationship. Interestingly, as we move into the age of Aries and the time of Greek and Roman mythology, El-Nath becomes a weapon, the horn of the bull that can conquer and kill. So Mars-Pluto can be a trauma pattern, it can be a weapon, it can be an acting out of abuse of power and violence and war and destruction, or it can be what it's really meant to be, the transformation of our sense of identity and our actions to come back into alignment with our soul selves and with how our actions can be an expression of our creativity, of our remembrance of the oneness of all that is, that we can be a fractal expression of cosmic consciousness, and that love and wisdom to be of service in our unique way in the world in this time. The key is to step out of our own trauma, to step out of our own fear, to step out of that sense that these things are going to happen to us, to step into our own process of evolution of consciousness, to step into our own process of involution, looking inward. What do I need to heal and clear from my ancestral lineage, from my trauma experiences, to be in alignment with my true self, to come back into alignment with my soul self, so that I can take responsibility, Mars, to be bringing my actions into the world, to be an agent of healing, an agent of hope, an agent of love in a troubled, turbulent world. This is the guidance of this new moon. This is the process that we're in individually and collectively. And we each can choose how we engage with these energies. They don't happen to us. We co-create with them based on our consciousness, based on our choices. And I think the key is, do we align with ego? And do we get caught in fear or our own version of power over? Or do we allow our third chakra to align with Pluto and the power and empowerment of cosmic consciousness, to burn away those out of balanced energies in our lives, to come back into our own alignment with our soul self, to be living our path and purpose in this time, to be living in truth and compassion and justice in right harmony with all that is. This is my daily prayer. This is my daily process. This is my effort every day when I walk the medicine wheel, to keep coming to center, coming back into alignment with the earth and sky and cosmic consciousness and my center, my heart. We're not perfect. We're all in our journeys of healing and transformation. But these energies of the earth and sky are saying we are held in the love and wisdom of the cosmos that is step by step supporting us in how to be in this journey of transformation, individually and collectively. And those of us that are on a path of healing and spiritual consciousness, we can't control the choices that others make or the responsibility they take or don't take to be in their journey of healing and transformation. But we can choose how we respond and how we interact, and whether we stay in that alignment with our inner truth, our inner knowing, our alignment with our hearts, our alignment with these energies of the earth and sky and cosmic consciousness. I encourage you to look at where this powerful new moon and these energies of Mars and Pluto fall in your chart. It'll show you where is that growing edge for you in your own healing process. I have a powerful way in which they're really activating my Chiron, what is still unhealed from my own trauma experiences and my own times of being out of balance with my actions. How can I keep doing that inner work to be more and more in the transformation of Pluto, guiding me into the true goal of who I am and how I can live from that deeper wisdom and that deeper alignment to be in right action, right loving, right knowing. May you also be supported by these energies in your journey with that. And again, I am so deeply grateful for this community, for the interactions with each other and the comments to these videos, for the caring and compassion I feel in this community and how we're holding each other and supporting each other as we're in this journey, in this transformational time. May we continue to be that part of that global network of healing around the planet to support the movement into a new earth and a new world together. Blessed be.